their mind all the way without carrying some of those biases forward. So, I like to say, that I try to open my mind, but then, the people that I work with on this, I like them to, put themselves in my shoes and open up their minds too. On the medical program, for example, and this will get Terry all hopped up and it'll make it interesting for everybody. Physicians kind of got dragged in to the medical program in a lot of states, Colorado included, as if that they were credible and trained. I'm a physician, I can blast that physician. But, as if they were credible and trained in how to make medical marijuana recommendations as a profession. By and large, most physicians, want to kind of stick their head in the sand and say, don't ask me, I don't want to get involved. There's some very good physicians, as you all know, who really understand it and have really taken the time and really make thoughtful recommendations. And then, of course, there's, physicians who are just out to make a buck, to try and sort of, see as many patients as they can and make those recommendations and charge more the more they recommend and things like that. So I don't think that that's done much in the way of, again, trying to add credibility because you're pulling through a group that traditionally and culturally has not been supportive of marijuana in anything. And that's just one example.
Larissa, there's a lawsuit.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. I don't have to go in order. Larissa.
Yes, sir. It's not going to let me off that easy. Yes, sir.
Dr. Wilk mentioned testing to a certain extent. Right now, there's a lawsuit going on in Colorado regarding pesticides. You represent consumers. The lawsuit is against the industry. And it's really it's groundbreaking in the sense that we now have, marijuana users establishing their political base and their strength and pushing back on the new industry. So tell us about that lawsuit and what's going on as much as you can. And how do you see this lawsuit impacting the industry in other states and moving forward in general?
Well, so what he's talking about is a pesticides lawsuit that's occurring in Colorado right now, where 2 attorneys are, and a couple plaintiffs are suing medical marijuana recreational dispensary and for using unapproved pesticides. So right now there's a lot of ambiguity around the law because there's no federal regulation around marijuana pesticide use. Pesticide creators can't put on their labels for federal reasons that their product is safe for consumption or for safer use on plants or marijuana plants. So what this is, it kind of opened up a Pandora's box of issues. And the lawsuit is actually coming in on the tail end of the issues. And I have to bring you guys back to March. And what happened in March, the media reported that there were 6 businesses that were caught in violation using unapproved pesticides. And they did not release the names. And so my organization, being a consumer group, we were really concerned about the public safety issue of this. So I sent a letter to the Colorado Department of Agriculture. They denied giving me the names of the violators. And then, based on it being an open investigation, and then I did a Colorado Open Records Act request with the Denver Department of Environmental Health, and they released the names to me. And they released the names to me 3 days before 420 weekend. So that was interesting. My phone was going off the hook. As soon as I received the names, I sent out a press release, and it caused a little bit of a stink. But they gave me the name, just a little bit of a stink. But they released the names to me because I argued it was a public safety issue. And that even though cannabis consumers only represent 1 to 2% of the entire state of Colorado, we needed to know what we were consuming was safe. The reason that safety came into question, while this was happening, I had scientists reach out to me to tell me that Eagle 20 contains this chemical called microbutanol, which turns to hydrogen cyanide during pyrolysis. Now, microbutanol is used for powdery mildew, which is a huge problem that we're dealing with in the cannabis industry right now. It's a systemic, it has a certain plant life. I don't want to get too much into the science of it, but pyrolysis, and this is what is making this a major issue, in consuming cannabis, as you smoke a joint or you have a bowl and there's that cherry on the end of the joint or in that bowl, the back end of that cherry is pyrolysis. So the heating up of the plant material is turning it to hydrogen cyanide. And what the scientists presented to me was that what people seem to have been reporting as cannabis toxicity, what they're reporting was nausea and headaches. And I speak Spanish, that's why I talk really fast. But what they were reporting as cannabis toxicity, headaches, and nausea, these are two things that cannabis, or two primary conditions that cannabis is used to treat. So there was a little disconnect there. And so we started raising the stink. Now the lawsuit is kind of apart from this issue because it's also a legislative and it's also a legal issue. 2 weeks ago, about a week and a half ago now, Governor Hickenlooper issued an executive order saying that all businesses moving forward found in violation of these pesticide use laws are going to have to destroy all their plants. And so that might, I think, even from a consumer advocacy perspective, maybe a little bit too far, but what is good about that is it is addressing the public safety side of it, and he admitted it is a public safety issue, and so there was a bit of a victory there. What is and we were talking about this before the panel, is perhaps the opportunity for people to have their marijuana individually tested like a consumer, but more so, policy-wise, what I would like to see is more enforcement. And, the lawsuit again is one extremity, but what I would like to
Did you really just say you like to see more enforcement?
I did say that. Well, yes, absolutely. And we have the consumer safety. We have to look out for consumer safety. I have to be confident that what I'm going to purchase at the store is what it is indeed I'm purchasing. And if I'm a medical marijuana patient, and let's say I can't get a red card for a variety of reasons, and I have to go to a rec store, I need to know that what I'm purchasing is safe. Medical marijuana isn't tested. So as far as I'm concerned, none of it's safe until we can have that tested. But what I would like
Eagle 20, the pesticide we're talking about, it's used on other things.
Absolutely.
What else is it used?
It's on food. And so here's the argument. So this is literally, when I say Pandora's box, I mean like major Pandora's box issues, just opening up all these different issues. And so there was a court case, and one of the attorneys was arguing that Eagle 20 is used on green leafy vegetables, asparagus, and stone fruits, and it's allowed to have a certain amount of food, and what they're saying is what we consume actually has more microbutanol than what's allowed in marijuana. However, I don't know about you guys, but I don't dab asparagus. I don't take spinach and pull joints out of it. So what right? So that argument didn't really hold water. What I would like to see is, I would like to see that we create studies using these substances and to see the impact in the manner in how we use cannabis and in the amounts that we use cannabis. Because even if the argument does hold water that it's safe for food consumption and it's safe for smoking, I don't know how many of you guys consume cannabis or not, but most cannabis consumers consume daily, and they consume all day long, morning, especially if they're a patient. And so we're not eating these foods as much as we're consuming cannabis.
Terry, Dr. Wolk mentioned that medical marijuana is not tested, and Larissa just reminded us of that. How do you see the values and the principles of our medical marijuana framework surviving, this non-medical retail onslaught that's more profitable and that may impact the medical marijuana framework? Do you see it benefiting medical marijuana, or ultimately has it been an issue that has caused concern for you as a patient advocate?
Well, I think the addition of adult use retail marijuana has sort of been a double-edged sword for patients. I tell patients all the time that everything changed for medical when Amendment 64 passed. And what I mean by that is that that consumers became, or patients became consumers. They were a commodity. Then we got this debate between recreational and medical that recreational pays taxes and medical doesn't. And so there are people that are on the medical registry just to avoid paying additional taxes. And so patients became tax evaders and criminals. And all of our caregivers that supported us and provided patients with products, they became complicit and they were criminals because they're just hiding under the caregiver halo in order to grow as much weed as they can and divert it out of state. So a lot of the attitude, in my opinion, sort of shifted from some legislators. Now, the other side, though, is that with retail marijuana, that patients that would not qualify otherwise, as under one of our 8 conditions, now have access to legal medical or legal marijuana through our recreational system. And where patients, before you were even legally allowed to try marijuana and find out if it worked for your condition, you had to jump through all the hoops of getting on a registry, getting your medical marijuana license, etc. So now, with the blessings of recreational, we don't have to do that with patients. Unfortunately, though, recreational doesn't carry a lot of the same products, the potencies, the high CBD or more medicinal lines that medical does, but it does give some patients an avenue. So it's really sort of this, there's some good things, there's some bad things, there are some things that we're trying to get more parity between the two systems where it makes sense. But at the same time, we have to be very cautious as we manage this transition that patients are inadvertently negatively impacted. And for example, people say, well, why can't patients just, we can just sell them both out of the same store, medical and rec, and we'll just have this counter here and this one over here, and patients will just get the tax break. Well, one of the fastest growing groups